I'm Spencer Mazik, and joining me now is lawyer turned co-founder of the world's first blogcasting platform, Zach Abramowitz. His website, ReplyAll.me, makes blogging as easy as emailing friends. Welcome, Zach. Thank you for joining us today.
Nice to be here, Spencer.
So first I want to talk about law school, Zach, because you were a stand-up comedian and a high school teacher before going to law school. So tell us, how did you arrive at the decision to go?
Law school was tough. You know, I originally, like you said, I was a stand-up comedian my last year in college, and that was riveting. It was exciting. It was fun. But at the end of a year of doing it, I decided I didn't want to be on the comedy circuit. I had thought about teaching.
Why, though? Because is it tough? I've heard that it's pretty tough and very difficult to make it as a comedian. Was that your experience? Did you find that to be true?
It's tough to break in. And, you know, I guess the first time that you perform, you sort of think, you know, the main obstacle here is just to get people to laugh. And once you've done that, once you're successful at it, you think, okay, I've made it. You know, everyone in the room was laughing. And what you find out is you haven't made it, that you really have to go through a long process of gatekeepers and screeners and scouts and getting noticed. And it really takes a lot out of you. And I didn't love the lifestyle. I was, you know, up late nights, sleeping late in the morning. It didn't suit me. And I looked at it and I said, you know, professionally, I guess if I became the next Seinfeld, that'd be great. But it didn't seem like things were going to go that way. What are the chances of that happening? What are the chances of that happening? Exactly. I mean, they were very low. And again, I was making the audience laugh, and that was great. But I realized it was going to be a much longer road, and one that I did not want to sit through.
So that was during your last year of college. But what about being a high school teacher?
So I had actually been interested while I was in school in being a high school teacher, but immediately when I realized that the stand-up comedy wasn't going to happen for me, when I realized that I was going to go to law school, I decided, you know what, let me take the next 2 years and teach, because that's something I'd always been passionate about. I felt like I would get it out of my system, and actually those 2 years teaching were great. I loved it.
How did you arrive at the decision, though, to go to law school?
This story is probably pretty familiar to people. My parents had told me, oh, you know, you should be a lawyer. You're always arguing with us. I liked the analytics side of it. I had done well in the LSAT, and it felt right, and I got into a really good law school. And I think those things together really informed the decision. It wasn't specifically, gosh, I'm really dying to practice law, or I was passionate about the law. It seemed at the time like a relatively flexible career move, and going to NYU Law never hurt anyone.
What did you think about law school once you were there? Did you convince yourself that you wanted to practice law in a very traditional sense?
Not initially. In fact, already by the end of my first semester, I started realizing that the things that my colleagues and other students in the class found really, really interesting and were getting very passionate about, whether it was a doctorate in law, whether it was their professor, whether it was a big job they had landed. All those things were incredibly exciting to them, and they weren't as exciting to me. I really wanted to be in the content industry, believe it or not.
And so what was exciting to you then about law school?
Well, I think the opportunities that it offered.
It sounds like you had some trepidation in terms of going to law in the traditional sense, but you did it anyway. You went on to be a corporate lawyer at Schulte Roth. Can you tell us about your experience there?
Sure, and that was a funny story, because the truth is, you know, a week before or 2 weeks before I started at Schulte, I really thought I was going to be a litigator. That's where I'd summered, and then I got a letter that said that I'd been placed in the business transactions department in M&A, which I had never done before at all. But I figured, you know what, this is a great opportunity. Remember, I got hired amidst, you know, one of the worst recessions in the country's history, and it was really tough. You know, to have a job at all was a thrill. So I was ready and raring to go and get some great deal work in.
The M&A, despite not having any experience in it,
having zero experience at all. I mean, I remember the first few months I was there. If you had told me even what due diligence was, I had no idea, because they didn't, you know, just throw us right in on deals. They kind of eased us into the process. So, you know, even the most basic terms. I remember actually the first deal that I worked on, they kept on talking about the schedules, and we were going to go through the schedules. And the entire time I was in the meeting, I'm flipping through this, and I had no idea what the schedules to the merger agreement were. It just hadn't been a term that had been explained to me. And while I'm sure plenty of the people who had summered there in the business transactions department at least had some basic idea of corporate work, would have had a better sense of what it is they were doing. I was lost.
So did that impact your time there in terms of what you enjoyed, what you liked about the practice?
Well, I think I got a lot out of the practice, and that's the truth. And I think not until I started, this new company did I realize how much I had gotten. But in terms of like the professionalism that they ingrained and the sense of being proud of a product, being detail oriented, just making sure to get every last detail right and no stone left unturned. Those were not skills that I necessarily had going in. I feel like I got that from practicing at Schulte.
Why did you decide to leave, though, after just 2 years of practice?
Well, while I was at my law firm, I came up with the idea for this company, for Reply All. And originally I had tried to work with a developer who we had given part of the company to, just to help us get the product off the ground, because neither my partner nor I have any technical skills. But at the end of about 6 months working with him, we realized that we were never going to get to market with him. And he was sort of unexpectedly drafted into the Israeli army.
I love that. Unexpectedly
well,
drafted.
he had a health, what's called in Hebrew a patur. It's an exemption, and he had a health exemption to get out of the Israeli army, but he had volunteered anyway. He didn't expect that he was going to get picked up, but it actually worked out best. We split amicably. He still has a little bit of the company, and we were able then to find another developer. But at that point, at the point where we lost him, I decided it was either go big or go home. It was time to go with this company and really see it through and make it happen, or not. So I left my job and I raised, together with my co-founder, $100,000 of friends and family money. And with that $100,000, we were able to find initially a development team and then a full-time developer who's now our technical co-founder. And we were able to get a site up and get some really interesting users and get some really interesting conversations going.
Yeah, and I'm curious, though, because ReplyAll.me, I know that that's something that you said that you started thinking about while you were actually still at the firm, but I know that you're also a tutor for the LSAT. So when did that come into play? Did you do that as a way to generate income, or are you really a teacher at heart, Zach?
It's funny. I tutored LSATs all throughout. Immediately after I had taken the LSAT, I got my first student and started tutoring, I think, like $40 an hour, nothing. And then while I was in law school, I used to tutor also just to make money. I was married. I already had a kid by the time first year ended. So I needed to generate a little bit of income if I could. And I just started tutoring then, and it's just always been something that I did. I didn't do it while I practiced. But when I left, found my startup, and I said goodbye to that big salary that I really miss. It was a really easy way for me to generate income. It didn't require me to prepare. I was able to meet with a lot of students, and I really do enjoy tutoring the LSAT. Am I a teacher at heart? I'm not sure.
So let's talk about ReplyAll.me. You said that you thought of the idea at the law firm. How did you and your co-founder come up with the idea?
So it's interesting. There was some downtime, as I mentioned, when I first got into the law firm. They didn't put us on deals right away, and it really wasn't an active deal time. So to pass the time, some friends and I sat and created a Reply All email chain, and we would email back and forth every day about sports, politics, pop culture, entertainment. And we started realizing that the conversations we were having by email were really interesting. As I mentioned, I'd worked in radio and I'd tried my hand at blogging and kind of burnt out. My partner had actually launched a podcast of 32 episodes, and he was able to actually get picked up by a bunch of other sites, his podcast was, but also burnt out. And we had really wanted to be content creators, but blogging was tough. It was tough to come up with ideas on our own. There was lots of writer's block. And podcasting was incredibly difficult to get together. To the scheduling conflicts, okay, we're going to do it at 10 o'clock my time, 11 o'clock your time. We're going to meet. We're not going to do it in a studio, so the sound quality won't be great. It just became really difficult to do. But what we found is these emails were really easy. So we thought, wouldn't it be great if we could create a platform where we could have these types of conversations, just the 2 or 3 of us, and everyone in the world could see the conversation and follow it as it would develop live. So we'd have the conversational give and take of a podcast, but it would be easy as creating a blog post, and there wouldn't be writer's block because you'd be doing it with other friends.
And hence the term that you guys coined, blogcasting.
Hence the term blogcasting. Well, yeah, we had networked with a guy named Jason Womack who writes for Entrepreneur Magazine, and he said, this is great. It's kind of like a blog and kind of like a podcast. And we said, ta-da.
Ding, 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 ding.
Blogcasting.
Well, and so tell us a little bit about the platform itself, because I think it's fantastic that you guys literally created it while you were, at the firm. I mean, this is the idea, that's where it was generated, but tell us about the platform as it is today.
Right. Well, the site that you're seeing is obviously not what we created at the firm. What we created at the firm was a meager prototype, which we took around to radio show hosts and other sort of influencers, and we said, hey, have you ever been having conversations, just the two or three of you, and thought, man, wouldn't it be great if everyone could hear this conversation? I said, well, we've created kind of a way to do that. We got this phenomenal response from several influencers, and we just started thinking, hey, this could be like a really big idea. There are other people out there, and we talked to friends, and the idea really resonated with them.
So you think it's what the people want by way of social networking?
I don't know if I would call it social networking. I would say it's creating content. Now, there are a lot of ways, to create content today. There are a lot of platforms to do that. But it only appeals to people who want to create content on their own as individuals, to write a column, to write a blog post. There's nowhere else where you can collaborate with other people to create content. So what you can do on Reply All is start a conversation. You invite friends to participate by entering their email address. And that way we actually know that the conversations that are taking place on the site, unlike forums and message boards and comment sections, aren't taking place between strangers. Mm-hmm. They're actually taking place between people who have a previous relationship. And as a result, they've got better chemistry and camaraderie with each other.
So what's the purpose of broadcasting that conversation to the world? Like, why can't you just have that conversation with your friends in a Reply All email chain like you did?
Right. Well, I think there are a lot of private conversations that you wouldn't want to open up to the rest of the world. But I think if it's a conversation about really interesting issues, the same way you'd hold like a panel at a conference and invite a few interesting speakers, or if you'd have a radio show or a podcast where you were basically talking with another person, but you were just inviting everyone to listen to you, we've created a way that everyone can do that, even if you don't have the sort of time and resources that it takes to create podcasts, which most of people don't. This was a way to do that just much easier.
So you're giving people a voice, you're giving them a platform to spread a message. So tell us about the commenter, the people who can comment on it. Are they able to comment and join the conversation?
So there is a way to join the conversation. We originally called it eavesdropping, and there was some sort of negative connotations with the word eavesdrop, so we changed that. But the idea is that you can reply. The people who are inside the cast or their guests can see what you've written, and if they think what you've written is really interesting and adds something to the conversation, they can add it right in, and not to a comment section underneath the conversation. They can become a part of the conversation
Doesn't it have
itself.
to be accepted, though, by the people who are carrying on the conversation?
Sure, and they're the ones who make that choice whether or not to add it in.
So you have said that this is the first of its kind, the platform. So to your knowledge, though, are there any copycats out there now?
I don't think there are copycats out there now. And look, we didn't launch the platform with a ton of fanfare. We didn't really tell the press about it. We didn't go to tech blogs. What we decided to do was just start having conversations with other really interesting people. Initially just by interviews. We would write someone and say, hey, listen, we really enjoy your work. Wanted to get you on for this kind of interview. And they would always ask us, oh, is it by phone? I said, no. It's done on the computer. It's text-based. And I said, you don't even have to block off time to do it. You can do it on your own schedule. Simply reply at your own convenience, kind of like a Reply All email chain. And they really appreciated that ease. So we started getting guests, and what we started noticing, we were getting guests that were like really impressive people who we probably wouldn't have been able to get on a podcast. We were able to get Bill James, author of Popular Crime and the leader of the sabermetrics movement. We were able to get Will Leach, the founder of Deadspin. We were able to get Noah Feldman, a professor of law at Harvard. We were able to get just a wide variety of people, authors, radio show hosts, Twitter all-stars. We were able to get, just recently, we have a conversation actually going on this week with an NFL player, with Eric Winston of the Arizona Cardinals.
And what is he talking about? And tell us about some examples of conversations that are being had on ReplyAll.me.
Sure. So this is actually a really interesting one. We've got Sam Monson, who runs the site ProFootballFocus.com, an NFL advanced stats site. We have Derek Sarley, who writes for the Philadelphia Daily News. We've got Eric Winston, and we've got a blogger for the Houston Chronicle named Steph Stradley, and they're discussing the issue of the implication of advanced stats in the NFL. And there's sort of an interesting tete-a-tete there, between people
they
who don't
all have very different opinions.
they
I
sort of have
imagine,
different
about it.
opinions, and we're able to see them interact, and they've been having the conversation all week. It hasn't taken a whole lot of their time. They just sort of chime in, but when people come to see it, they see a really nice,
Yeah, that's
cohesive
pretty neat.
conversation. But we have really conversations going on about all topics. Entrepreneurship, we've had conversations with venture capitalists and famous angel investors. We have conversations about marriage. We've got conversations about legal issues. As you saw, we actually were able to get a story picked up in Above the Law based on a conversation between two big law firm associates about shameful billing practices they've engaged in. So what we're finding is that people can really discuss anything that's really compelling and really interesting to them.
Do you generate any income based on the site? If so, how do you do that?
So we've just released a feature, which is an embeddable widget. And we're going to allow that widget people to basically have conversations on ReplyAll, and then with a simple copy and paste, put them on their own site. Because a lot of content creators are looking for other simple ways to create content, and we've done that. We've created something new. This is a way for them to have a live developing conversation on their site, but in print. So what we're going to start doing in 2014 is rolling out a premium feature for people who like to pay for customizations, pay for certain embedding rights, and then ultimately white label the product to various content creators as well. And I think there are just a slew of possibilities for who'd like to import these types of conversations. Again, because you don't lose that dynamic give and take of conversation, but it's just very easy to create them. The cost of content creation is low.
So Zach, when did the site officially launch, and would you say that it's been a success so far?
We soft launched in June with 500 unique views, and soft launch for us was almost like beta, but it had to be public. It couldn't be private, because the whole idea here was conversations that anyone in the world could see. So we didn't make a whole brouhaha out of launching, as I said, and we've grown with zero promotion to 10,000 uniques a month already this month. So 10,000 monthly uniques.
Yeah.
So I would say it's definitely been a success so far in terms of getting the word out, in terms of getting high-profile influencers to use the site and share their conversations.
Well, we wish you the best of luck. Thanks so much for joining us today to talk about ReplyAll.me.
Really appreciate it, Spencer. Thanks for having me.
For more information on this or other topics, subscribe to BloombergLaw.com. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for joining us. Bye, everybody. Thanks.